and beyond. This is the one you've all been waiting for. So what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to start by talking a little bit about why PvP is in the state it is today. So when you folks say, it's been 3 years, why haven't you done anything about this yet? This is basically, I'll tell a little bit of the why for that, and basically having known the challenges we faced, I'll cover some of the things that we have done to try to correct feeble attempts ultimately to correct some of those problems we've had, and then I'm going to end with what's coming very soon and how those problems will hopefully finally be coming to rest. Right, so let's just get right into it here. So he still is extremely popular in DCUO, and in fact, in the month of June, almost 23% of level 30s participated in PvP. Now, to compare that to like what most MMOs report as far as their PvP participation, that's like 4 or 5 times more than others. And just to sort of give you an idea how that compares to other types of content, 26% of level 30s played duos during that same time. So it's still as far as DCUO's PvP goes, we're one of the most popular. Our PvP is probably one of the most popular MMO PvP that's out there now. So early development, right? So before we had even launched early pre-alpha, there were a number of things we knew we wanted to do with DCUO as a new game, shiny new game that we were very excited to make. Right, obviously one of them was a novel combat system. Right, we wanted to bring action combat, to the MMO world like they have never seen it. Another one of those things was we wanted to have PC console cross-platform. Right, and if you kept up with our game through early pre-alpha and we're always very open with how the early development of DCUO. We were basically, you could play with the controller, play with the keyboard. It was basically the same server, same client. But unfortunately, near the release, the decision was made to sort of separate them for reasons. So there were some other things we wanted to do too. And just that the PC console cross-platform thing was an idea of things that we wanted to do, but we weren't able to do. There are a few other things we wanted to do, but we didn't ultimately do. One of which, early on, we actually wanted to do objective-based roles, right? So we wanted to have something like, controllers. Controllers were the masters of securing and interacting with things, right? So everybody could come in and basically use the terminal or whatever, but controllers would be extremely good at it. They'd be able to do it a lot faster, right? So they sort of had that hacking motif going with them. On top of like a lighter version, like maybe they would still do controlling, but from an objective-based standpoint, they would be the masters of security stuff. And likewise, tanks. Tanks would be the masters of space. So a tank would come in and they would control an area. Remembers these types of things. On top of just being a little bit more tough. And healers. The idea we originally had way back when would be only healers would be able to rally, right? So they'd be the only ones that would be able to pop people up and converse. And same thing with DPS, it'd be the only one to be able to secure and do the coup de grace and make sure you could not respawn or get rally, right? And then at the same time, we just wanted to have.
You can actually see examples of that in some maps, like Arkham Asylum, for example, where you've got a lot of nodes and a lot of interacts that are popping off all over the place. You can see how that would actually play out with this concept had we kept with it.
Sure. And and as far as the classic MMO rules go, we wanted to just do lighter flavors of it. So the tank would be a little tougher, and the DPS would do a little more damage, and the healer would be a little better healing. But unfortunately, that was deemed too risky to do at the time because the classic MMO model was proven, and so basically we were already taking a lot of risks. So the word came down from on high that we would stick with the classic MMO group dynamics. So, and that is what happened. So we went forward with the Trinity. Sometimes it's called the Iron Triangle. I mean, it would be more accurate for DCUO to call it the Quadrinity. We're not the only ones that actually have 4 roles. EverQuest and a few other MMOs have the same sort of four role setup. But basically, I mean, it's obvious you have to know this stuff. But only one role can take damage. That's a tank. Right? You only have one role that can keep the group alive, that's the healer. Only one role restores power, that's the controller, and only one role can KO things, and that's the DPS. right? So that's more or less what we went forward with. And the iron triangle, as it's called, it's great for tough group content, right? Because the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, right? That's what lets your group or your raid be able to stand up with to a raid boss that just does tremendous amounts of damage that would flatten people. You're able to take this out. So it's really great for PvE, but it is absolutely awful for PvP, right? Because players are not raid bosses. Right, so you have one role that's able to that takes a raid boss to even challenge them as far as taking them down. You have another one that can restore, just completely restore someone's life bar a couple times over. You have another one that's damage output enough to take down a raid boss. It's just it's kind of a messy situation. So let's take a look briefly at sort of the differences in effectiveness, because that's really what it comes down to, right? If you look at the base effective health of a non-tank versus a tank, and this is before you block, before you use any superpowers to even modify that. Just on its face, a tank has 4 times the effective health as a non-tank. And likewise, you look at a controller versus a non-controller. Non-controller is regenerating about 25 power a second base, but a controller, with their power over time and regeneration, etc., is pushing 100. And likewise, damage potential, right? A roll, non-damage roll is going to be lucky if they can push 1,000 DPS, whereas a fully seasoned, like a seasoned excellent DPS will be rocking about 4,500, right? And you'll find it's the same thing with healer, right? If you're not a healer, maybe you can get a third of your bar in one, before you drain your power, whereas a full healer, full gear healer can do that by a factor of 4. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Rolls are 4 times stronger than their non-roll counterparts in whatever it is they do. So with that said, we, and having known this even before we released, we tried to do some things to sort of bring rolls into line so that PvP could even happen. Right, and one of the things we launched with were roll debuffs, and the idea of the roll debuff is to make rolls, bring this crazy 4 times multiplier down to something that's a little more manageable that would allow PvP to take place in a reasonable way. Great on paper. Unfortunately, we have the role population disparity, right? Where majority of the players are playing DPS, and so if you're just pugging or whatever. Basically, if you wind up missing rolls, and so if you have an unopposed roll, if their counter roll isn't there, then that particular roll is going to run wild and it's not going to be countered. That's going to create a huge imbalance for your team. So as we move forward, we're given that as an issue, we're like, okay, how can we give debuffs to everyone? Let people opt in, make them part of the movement. Move mode. So we have the move mode debuffs. Those are available to all, and so it sounds good on paper. Unfortunately, the duration of the debuff was too short. That ultimately made them pretty prohibitively expensive, and so either basically they didn't get used as much as they could, and
we didn't have armories at the time.
We didn't have armories at the time. That was a problem. And so finally, another thing that we did is various forms of dark statistical sorcery as a way to sort of reduce some of the problems. One of which was like we added critical suppression to keep damage a little more flat rather than spiking crazily. And more importantly, we increased the health while reducing toughness. So effective health stayed about the same, but really what that did is it reduced the effectiveness of healing. I'm not going to go into why that is. If you're curious about why that is what that did, you can come ask me. But it's all very statistical voodoo. So the gist of it is no amount of skill can replace a roll, right? So this chart is highly scientific and represents my opinion, but but it is a chart, that means you must believe it.
Which, by the way, his opinion is law in many areas of the building that we work in.
Yeah. So effectively, though, group composition is probably the most important thing today when determining what's going to, who's going to win during a PvP role, right? Because no amount, very. How do I want to phrase this? Basically, if you don't have a healer, you better way outskill the other players. the other team. And conversely, even just not having a controller is way too much of a disadvantage versus a team that does have a controller. So it's not a great situation to be in. This is closer to what we'd really want, right? So we're skill and tactics and sort of the meta game about who should we attack and what's our game plan, and just how good you are playing the game is just about as equal as group composition. And then gear is a secondary sort of consideration. So if you have a non-perfect group, but you're slightly better than the other team you're fighting, it's not going to make that big of a difference, right? So group composition important, but not like a deal breaker. So what's coming pretty soon? The biggest thing is that we can finally, or very soon, we'll finally be able to separate PvE from PvP. Because I mean that's been the big problem all along, right? Is the fact that we've had to basically keep up with the Joneses, and Joneses being the PvE content. As it increases, we need to make sure that we're keeping PvP in line with that at the same time. You might ask, why haven't we restricted PvE gear from PvP arenas yet? Because we technically could have done that. Because we started doing it, we started restricting PvP gear in PvE instances several updates ago. The reason why I didn't want to do that is because we needed to account for ungeared people. So if we were to deactivate all your PvE items when you stepped into an arena for the first time, and you didn't know there was a vendor we hid in Watchtower or Hollow Doom that you had to buy PvP gear for, that your experience would be absolutely terrible. So we basically have just been kind of grinning and bearing it until we were able to get this technology. And this technology that I'm going to tell you about here is very exciting. It will detect if you're ungeared, right? It will detect if you're not wearing PvP gear. And if you're not, it will provide you entry-level stats. Basically, it'll give you a free cash set if you don't have PvP gear. So what that lets us do is, if you're interested in PvPing, you can just queue up. And you don't have to know about the vendor or anything else, and you can try out PvP just with whatever you're wearing, and we'll give you viable stats, and you can actually try it out, and it'll be the same as if you found the vendor and bought everything and had everything you need to start out PvP. And so what that should do is, if you do this and you actually enjoy PvP and you start earning PvP currency, then you'll be like, hey, what can I spend this currency on? You'll actually have an investment and a reason to go look for the vendor after you determine you enjoy playing PvP.
In fact, not having this is the reason we had cash gear on the bottom of the ladder, because how do you get the marks to actually get the gear you needed if you can't really survive in PvP without the gear? So this takes care of that.
Yeah,
it absolutely addresses it.
It is a huge improvement. And the other part of this too is we don't necessarily, this gear is for more than just PvP. We're starting with PvP, but we might start rolling it out soon in situations like seasonal events where we don't want you to roll over Aquaman or Ocean Master with your Tier 6 gear and solo them. We can use it for situations like that and numerous other situations. But what took us so long to do this? Basically, we're already halfway through Tier 6 PvE, and by all rights, we probably should have updated the PvP gear already, and that alone is part of the problem, right? Like, a single weapon mastery combo, if you're using new weapons and the new armor will just about kill you, right? So we should have updated gear already, but we really haven't because we've been waiting for this tech. And the reason it's taken so long for this tech is we needed to finish leagues first, right? Lars and his team can only do so much at the same time, and leagues were a huge initiative that the game really needed. And so basically that was ahead of the pipeline before this tech. And now finally that we've launched leagues, we're finally able to get this tech finished, and we'll finally be able to roll forward and get this done. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to skip the first half of season 3 and go straight to the second half of season 3. So what that means is we'll just be updating the stats on the gear. So your existing PvP gear, which I believe is capping out at Sierra 90, that stuff will you'll basically log in after this update. I believe it's probably update 41 is what we're targeting. Don't quote me on that, but you will. But you'll find your gear is combat rating 97 to 99, which is a pretty gigantic.
Good work, by the way.
Yeah, good work on making that. But that'll be a pretty gigantic jump in stats. And so that means the start of the next season, which will happen the update after that, will have a PvP maximum CR of 100. So we've already showed you sort of the unreasonable roll stat deltas we were talking about before, where it's like a non-roll is 1/4 of the awesomeness of the full roll. This is more what we're going to try to target for, or what we are targeting for the new PvP gear. And now that we're able to basically isolate PvP from PvE and treat PvP for PvP's sake, right? And that is basically about a 50 to 65% difference between the roll and the non-roll, right? So the difference is, the difference between a tank and a non-tank is going to be much smaller. Difference in healing capability between a healer and non-healer a lot smaller. Same thing with DPS. A healer is going to do just as much, just about as much damage as a DPS, will. So everybody's going to be a lot closer to each other. And so we're starting with a clean start, more or less, right? So since we can finally isolate PvP from PvE, it'll be, like Legends is a good example. So character imbalance aside, it's actually, the most even PvP that we have. This is more or less what you can expect with arena PvP once this technology is in and everything is completed in the next couple of updates. So for one, there will be no PvE consumables or trinkets. What does that mean? Well, that basically means is that each one of those slots is already spoken for, right? The one consumable you'll be able to use is an infinite soda cola. We're not going to try to make this a cash sink or anything like that. It'll be an item you can buy once, you equip it in your consumable slot, and you basically, like Legends Cola, you will have a soda cola that you can use at every cooldown. And likewise, you'll have the standard PvP trinket for your trinket slot. We are not getting rid of the existing utility belts or anything like that. You can still hang on to them for purposes of nostalgia. But for the most part, you probably just want to put the standard trinket in your trinket slot. And that also means, another implication of that is no mainframe mods, no mainframe trinkets, so supply drops, sidekicks, backup henchmen, that whole thing, orbital strikes, none of those anymore in PvP.
Tac mods.
No tac mods. That also means roll debuffs will be unnecessary because everybody will be close enough to each other that it feels comfortable. And so there won't be any more concept of counter rolls, right? At least in as far as they exist right now. Won't be any more move mode debuffs necessary either. There's no more confidence buff because everybody will be close enough that the damage deltas will be fine. We won't have to try to make up for a negative 25% penalty, which we recently got rid of anyway. But there's no need to try to counter that damage disparity. So one bit of aside to that, controllers will still debuff, right? They'll still be able to debuff at armor or healing or whatever like they do right now. Tanks will still remove controller debuffs, and tanks will still resist control. And the reason, yes, you're welcome. And the reason for this is that's part of the core design, right? Those things have absolutely nothing to do with PvP. This is something that controllers have always, it's part of our actual design for controllers and tanks. So those things will remain as they are. So let's get down to some of the really nitty-gritty specifics of the changes that will soon be patch notes coming to a test center near you in about 6 weeks or so. First, I want to just stress this. All the changes we're about to talk about right now are only for PvP. PvE is going to be unaffected by these changes. So to get right down to it, some of the, one of the bigger ones is like no more team resets. And what I mean by that is like, you're fighting the other guy, you get him down to like just about dead, and oh, here comes the supply drop. Okay, he's full again. Whatever. Fight. Oh, here comes Transcendence or Regeneration. There's his health and power full again, And basically having multiples of these that you can just rotate them over and over is really actually pretty lame, in our opinion. So basically, obviously you're not going to have supply drop because you're not going to have access to mainframe mods. We've retuned healing and power restoration supercharges, so they're much more subdued. They're not full team resets that they used to be, and to sort of help balance this out and to make basically groups without a controller a little more viable, you'll recover 8% of your power per second while you're out of combat. And that's basically the same amount of regeneration you get by health. So what that means, if you can completely wipe the other team and then stay out of combat for 12 seconds or less, you'll have full power as well as full health. And sort of I guess we'll move on to talk specifically about the healer role here. So some healer-specific changes, shields. So team shielding from healers is only going to prevent 25% of damage instead of all damage. So greatly reducing the effectiveness of shielding. And on top of that, we're reducing the bonus that healers receive in arenas to 25% instead of 65%. And that, now keep in mind, we're targeting about a 150 to 165 increase in general power for what that role does. So that's the reasons for all these changes we're talking about here. Looking specifically at tanks, so what we're doing is when you use a superpower as a tank, you'll get a health, basically a health pool increase. I'm not talking about heals, I'm talking about your health pool will get larger when you use a superpower. And that is instead of a toughness increase for ice and earth, or a flat damage reduction that earth gets, or other health pool increase mechanics, such as rage and fire path. So pretty much that means using a superpower will have a similar effect for all tanks. The specific defensive mechanics, we're not changing those, but we are reducing their effectiveness such that their effectiveness is 25% instead of, like, for example, that means reflect will be a 25% damage decrease. Tanks, rage mechanic, the heal that you're getting will be 25% of incoming damage heal, right? So again, this is to keep everybody within that reasonable 150, 165% range. Specifically for, you do it. There we go. Controller role. So not too many changes for controllers, but one of the big ones is no vitalization bonus for being role. It'd be like, wah! Well, because the base power over time is already a 50% regeneration increase. So basically, just the fact that you can throw power over time is super powerful. Notwithstanding getting more vitalization bonus on top of that. Specifically for the damage roll, we're instituting crit caps. Right now we have crit suppression is a 50% hack and half. We're actually changing that because of weapon mastery to crit caps. So we're going to cap and crit at a 35% chance, and likewise we're going to crit cap damage at 175%. So that'll keep things at the same. It works out to about the same amount of crit suppression, but it's just kind of a different way to approach it for kind of a different reason. And the other kind of big change is we're going to reduce non-field damage over time durations. And part of that is, well, the largest part of that is because of the power regeneration factor, and trying to basically keep damage over time from being the rather powerful thing you launch just as you go down, and keep the other team from regenerating completely. So let's talk about really the really awesome stuff here, which is the PvP gear and the stats and whatnot. So we're going to have one type of PvP gear that is going to be shared by all the roles. So there's not going to be tank specific gear, or healer specific gear, or DPS specific gear. Each role will share the same type of gear. We're going to have smaller stat jumps in between the levels. So right now, current season is about a 35% difference between the lowest and the highest gear. We're going to reduce that delta to about 20%, just so it's not basically reducing the gear factor by a little bit, but still making enough that it's a big jump and you want to do it. Because it'll be role agnostic gear, we're not going to have socket bonuses. So we're basically, rather than having colored sockets, we're going to have like a prismatic or colorless socket, depending on, I guess, whether you're optimistic or pessimistic. that will basically take any colored mod. And the other kind of interesting change here is weapons will finally have normal stats. And what I mean by that is right now they've been 77.9 for a long time. We probably could have done this when we restricted PvP gear from PvE instances. But we've basically been adding a butt ton of precision to make up for the fact that weapons needed to stay at level 30 to keep you from using them in terrible ways. So what that means basically is weapons will have the same, like your Sierra 100 weapons will have the same power as a PvE weapon of that same combat rating. So these would be the total stats of the PvP Sierra 100 stats. I'll leave that up there for a second. You see the health is much higher than it is right now, so that
cameras just
So this is unmodified by mods or anything, and this is no skill points. This is the base. And I should preface this by saying that this may change, but this is what we've been using we've been testing this internally, the stats and a lot of these balance things we're talking about for about a month, and we're very happy with the way it feels. It's literally night and day. It's the might is what the might is. Basically, it's the might should be equal to precision as far as you'll notice that precision is lower because you'll have the full weapon damage, right? Let me show you the next slide. This is some examples of the gear, and again, this is subject to change if we tweak the packages at all, but. So you'll see that the hand, the weapon, and they're not going to be peppermint blasters or war spring, by the way. It's just you should know that Crafty Crafter is a very funny guy, and so when he makes our internal testing items, he likes to.
Yes, we were beating the shit out of each other with peppermint.
It was hilarious. It was quite delightful. But you'll see that the weapon is 483.8 DPS, which is very very high, chest and legs are up there as an example of what you can expect with the stats. So here's what you can expect a PvP, fighting in arena PvP would be like. So roles are still very important. The takeaway I don't want you guys to come off with is like we're not saying everybody's going to be DPS and it's not going to really matter. That is absolutely not the case. And so like some of these what's the word I'm looking for? Hellish or terrible things, playtest wise, that I put Jens and I up against were fighting against teams of stacked healers and controllers with all DPS versus DPS and tanks, I believe.
Early tests.
Early tests, yeah. Early tests were bad. That's when we realized, hey, you know what? Supercharges with stacked healers and controllers suck. Good God. Basically, in those situations, we were still losing. It was a lot closer. Some of those games were very close. The systems team and Jens, we're not probably not as good as obviously our champions and top teams from today. We're all pretty good. So we set up stacked teams. I believe it was Crafty and Jens and myself. And then on the other team we had Spord and Drenz, and then Matt Johnson's dude. So we had three experienced and two less experienced people on each team, and a fight against 3 healers, 2 controllers, and these are experienced guys, experienced guys on the other side who are gnarly folk who know to play these roles. We still lost. In subsequent fights, we kept the tank and the DPS. I went healer, and that was actually enough to kind of swing the difference. So I believe we won that fight by like 10. Right, it just came down right down to it. So roles are still super important because it more or less comes down to if you have a healer on your team, even though the healer can't completely refill your bar 3 times per full bar of power, you're still talking about having a 170% or 200% power bar versus the other team, right? Because if they don't have a healer, so there's still a huge advantage to having a healer or a controller. For example, or a tank for the controller's cleanses and stuff on a team. So roles are still very important.
And you're mentioning things that are applicable, I think, between the relationships of the roles, and clearly deathmatch.
Yeah.
The roles are even more important in cases where you're splitting teams and going for different objectives as well, because matchups make a big difference in those cases as well.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, kind of what I was just alluding at, roles are super important, but they're not. It's not a complete deal breaker if you're missing. If you don't have a healer or you don't have a controller. If you're really good, you'll be able to overcome that disparity now in 4s, 5s, and 8s. In 1v1 and 2v2, we found that composition just wasn't much of a factor. And some of the weirdest compositions, like the healer controller combination, still very good, but tank can still take it out. It really seemed in our internal testing come down to who was better at playing the game.
Because KOs happen.
Yeah, because KOs happen.
It's just time to KO is reduced significantly.
Right. So
I stole your thunder.
That's right. No, next slide. That's good transition to the point, right? So basically, increased lethality, right? But it's not because of burst damage. It's not like it is right now, where it's like, oh, he countered me and did a 12K weapon mastery crit, right? Now if you get countered to take a 10, 12K weapon mastery crit, it hurts. But you'll still, assuming depending on how you geared yourself, you still have 60% of your health back. So you're like, ow, keep fighting. Rolls can slow but not reverse the tide, and that's the important part. Is people are gonna get KO, right? So a healer can slow that burn on the bar, but they're not going to completely basically reset the fight. Damage and defense capabilities are much closer, right? So because you're playing if you're playing a healer, you're not punching with a pair of oven mitts on your hands. It's really you're actually a dangerous force. And you will eventually run out of power, right? So as much as if you have a controller on your team, you will be you're increasing the power, the incoming power by your group by 50 to 65%, which is a lot more. If you're running against an all DPS team, they're going to be and you're going to be able to get powers off once every 8 to 10 seconds instead of 15 to 16 seconds. That's a huge advantage. So definitely. Because you're going to run out of power, finite power means finite healing. So everybody runs out of power, healing runs out, you start running on fumes, people are going to go down. So how is Legends affected by this? Well, role disparities don't really affect Legends because they don't really have roles per se outside of like any objective base and special sort of sticky stuff they have. The dot and power regen changes, we just went ahead and pushed live because they were, like I said, we've been testing these things for a little more than a month now, and they were important enough changes that we figured we might as well just get them out there. Particularly with the tournament coming up, we wanted to get Legends in as good a state as we could, given the changes that we made that we're very comfortable and happy with. And there's no plan to change the way shields work in Legends, mostly because Legends don't have any. There's no dedicated healer in Legends, so the effect of shields isn't as horrible. So no plans to change that either. So with all that said, what's not changing, right? We're not going to change any of the basic combat mechanics. So counter attacks and counter immunity and all that rot is going to stay the same. Everything you know and love. Map rotation is going to stay as it is right now. There's no plans to change the way that works, and there's no plans for this to change the way queuing and matchmaking work. Now that said, Jens might have some things to talk about.
Yeah, so we talked about the new UI in the keynote. We do actually have plans on queuing and matchmaking and changing that up for PvP specifically. We do have ideas that we will present to you guys when the time comes and work in progress. But we want to get down to, map rotation is important to us for keeping the queues moving. But we definitely do understand that it leaves some maps out that you guys might want to play. So what we'd like to do is get toward more of a voting system. Maybe you have a couple options when you're in the queue about what maps actually come up, and the teams can choose and vote on which one they might actually zone into. So some more versatility like that, putting the sort of choice of what you guys are going to be playing. That way we can just have a general queuing system. Match you up in terms of groups, and then let you select the map afterwards after we put you guys together. So just trying to speed things up like that, but also trying to keep the spirit of map rotation and just targeted queuing and matchmaking to change it. So some things in the UI that we're working on will really help that under the hood of the systems. And Hackney, Mr. UI guy back there, is now furiously whispering to Locke. So what did I say that was wrong?
All right, well, let's get right down to it.
There's other things you left out that we can't talk about right now.
Okay. So should I say them?
No. Next year.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's,
What about the gear that you've released that has both defense and toughness? Are the stats going to be obsolete?
which, can you give me an example?
Like OP, like necklaces or rings?
Oh, yeah, so I mean, there's gonna be edge casing kind of stuff where, you know, we've added something because you can, right now, bring your PvE gear into a PvP situation, but basically, we're gonna consider that PvE gear, so they won't function. Basically, we're gonna keep it as clean as we can going into this, so we can.
And on the clean start thing, like what we're saying is this is where we're starting from. And
right.
we'll be having a lot of dialogues with our PvP community about the things that you would like to see change
absolutely.
or evolve as the system moves forward from this clean slate perspective.
Right, so if you guys come up with us and you're like, you know, we really miss consumables and we want karmic hex back in the game or whatever, we'll might go ahead and do that, but a lot of this is going to depend on the feedback you guys give to us.
Tiffin might say, I love counter immunities. I've come completely full circle on this, and I want to double down on that and make them even longer, and we might do that. I know this will happen one day.
You can make them longer, you can make them last forever.
Forever. Farkas?
My question doesn't relate so much directly to the current changes as to the UI changes that have been alluded to. So, two things that I have heard a lot of people who I PvP with say they would really like specifically for Legends PvP, the ability to select my Legends character before I go and select maps, sort of like pilot, boom, this is the character I'm going to use, not select the map. And the second is the ability to select an option that will select a random Legends character from all the ones that I have unlocked.
Okay, so that latter one is coming. And I was going to talk about that tomorrow, but I'll just answer it now. So yeah, the latter one is coming. And as for how you queue in PvP and in PvE, we really need to do a better job about surfacing what the community is doing and where the people are. Everything is so hidden and under the hood, and we want to change that. I can't commit to exactly how we're going to change that and what we're going to do, but there's actually been, and people on the community council know that I've been bringing this up with them for quite some time now and talking about it and proposing different ideas on how to deal with role-less buffs and how to deal with queuing and the various roles in the game and even deserter penalty and how you vote kicking and how you open an instance up and what conditions you can do that with. There's a lot of different nuances and tensions there that are community driven and actually driven by player behavior, and we do want to address those. And specifically with queuing, I really truly believe that something like a lobby system where people can kind of self-organize in their PvP groups and then actually, sweet, I stole your thunder, and self-organize to form these PvP groups would be really beneficial to the PvP portion of the game.
You're talking about healer shield only not preventing all damage over time. Are personal shields affected the same way?
Yeah, basically, I guess I didn't make that super clear. Pretty much all shields are going to be 25%.
What about arenas like Call of Doom, where you need to activate a node, or safe houses, where when you're in the suit, if you're constantly taking damage, you're going to go the entire time without getting a single point.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is something we'll take feedback on, but I could also counter that and say, well, maybe you might have to take out the other team before that happens, right?
And just hope that they don't rally time to come back and continue with the path.
Yeah, this is going to be part of the play testing portions of this, right? So.
And also, on that note, we tried some things in last lap, and I think we learned a lot of lessons in terms of, what type of content is most appropriate for PvP arenas. And we tried to do some new things that, Dizzy Kraken, bless his soul, tried to do some stuff that push the system in different directions, at my request. And some of them worked, some of them didn't. And it's one of the reasons you saw multi-mode arenas on my list, because I do believe we can do things that hit what I was trying to go for, but within the systems that we have, if we had a little more freedom to do that, rather than trying to do that crazy watchtower football and the interacts on the side. All that is, none of it's messaged very well. It's very confusing. A lot of veterans probably don't even know how some of that stuff works, because it's like square peg, round hole kind of functionality.
Right, and another thing I could bring up too is just because things are the way they are now contributes to things like why do timers have to be that long? Well, because you can shield, and somebody might have to break your shield down to prevent you from securing. If you can't, if any damage can prevent you from securing, maybe the secures don't need to be that long anymore, right? So there's a lot of different ways to approach this, and a lot of solutions we can look at.
So you'll see adjustments.
So one of the issues with the last tier of PvP was that controllers didn't really get a lot of bite, and so power costs were an issue. PvE, I know we've been getting kind of the increased power costs. Is that going to be a PvP thing? Like, are power costs going to cost as much in PvP gear as they do in PvE gear?
Yeah, I mean, basically it's the same sorts of scales, right? So.
Doesn't that make the soders less effective as you grow?
Yeah, everything's tuned. Basically the soders. Like for example, we didn't just say, okay, you're getting a tier 6 soda. We said you're getting a soda that we're designing specifically for PvP and the amount of health and power you have in PvP with even a cooldown that matches what we want, so that it is exactly what what we want for arena, right? So it's not in terms of balance, it is tuned for this specifically.
Is it like a CR 100 PvP cola versus a PvP CR 99 cola, or are all colas that you use the same health?
Are you asking if it's a single item you buy once, it scales with you?
It is a single item you will buy once.
Yeah, essentially.
Right,
Like
so it's going to be
power cost basically. Is what I'm asking.
The difference in power cost is not enough that it will make a difference to you.
Like if you're increasing your health by 20,000
Also, shut
and
up.
your soda gives 2,000, you're going to drink the soda and get a glitch. Is that what's going to end it up?
No,
No.
don't worry about it. You will get.
Don't worry. We got it. No.
You'll get 35% of your power back at level 100.
Right.
Okay, so it's percentage based.
It's stat
It
based.
is based on stats. It's 30 or 35% plus. I don't remember exactly.
As your stats
what
go
it is.
up.
Just kick
Plus or
him.
minus 10.
Kick him.
It's all. Yeah, it'll cool, man. That's right.
You said that you're not removing the controller debuffs, but are you having any changes to them? I'm thinking more like, not so much the defense debuff, which has got a fairly common use, and just the percentage decrease in the defense or toughness, but the other two, so the healing debuff, which has two effects of reducing the healing in and having the restoration of the healer, and the damage debuff, which at the moment just strips the damage buff from the DPS. Is there going to be any changes made to those?
No. Part of the, for example, the heal debuff now is basically there's two things. One of it is it's the flat heal debuff, and another part of that is the anti-healer role specific stuff. So that portion of the heal debuff is going to go away, and you'll just get the standard. You'll have the.
So
standard
is that the
heal
having
debuff.
the restoration part, which is
Right, you'll just have the 25%. Right, so
Reduced
it's
healing
not
in.
going to be the big gnarly one. It needs to be today to bring healers down from 165 to 100. It'll be the one that goes from 125 to 100.
So what about the damage debuff though?
Damage debuff will do what it does now.
Just strip the damage buff from DPS.
Yeah.
Cypher? Or did I get that wrong?
Infinity.
What?
Infinity.
Infinity, sorry.
Do the weapon crit caps affect weapon industry?
Yes, that's part of the reason for that. Mathalos?